again, folks. Just me and Doug. And before we start actually training dogs, I would like to talk to you just a little bit about how to watch a dog training video. About 30 years ago, when I first started learning to train dogs, I was learning to train border collies, and I was watching videos and books and anything I could lay my hands on to try to learn to train a dog that could help me around here with cattle and sheep and miniature horses and all kinds of livestock. And I would read things in those books and watch things in those videos, but then when I tried it, it never seemed to work like it did when the writers and the video guys were doing it. And it was very frustrating. And then I stumbled upon a bunch of guys who were actually training border collie. I met them through the border collie associations, and I started going to their farms and watching them train. And at first, it was a lot like the videos I was watching. And I would go home and try the same things that they had done, but it wouldn't work for me. And I noticed that each of them, and there were probably 10 or 15 different guys my age now, 60-ish, 50, 60, 70-year-old guys and girls who were training, and they were all using different techniques, different procedures and different protocols, and yet they were getting very similar results in their dogs. And I watched and watched and watched until I started watching for in what ways are these trainers similar. And what I found was they all had sort of the same approach, the same personality, the same attitudes toward their dogs. The trainers were all very self-confident. They were all very quiet. They spoke very little to their dogs. I tended to talk a lot to my dog, to try to explain to him what I wanted. These wonderful trainers that seemed to communicate perfectly with their dogs rarely ever spoke to their dogs. And they never got excited. Even when they were training puppies and the puppy did something completely unnecessary or completely uncalled for, they never got excited or flustered. They watched their dogs very carefully. They would watch the way the dog held their ears or moved their ears, and they seemed to make a distinction sometimes when their dog's ears would perk up or when they would lay their ears back. And they would attach some significance to when the dog's tail was up and when the dog's tail was down. And seemingly the excitement of the dog versus the calmness of the dog, they would notice when the dog noticed things. And when I started trying to mimic those trainers and watch the things that the trainers watched, that's when I started learning how to communicate with my dogs. I realized that the dogs will tell me when they are about to obsess on something, when they are content, when they are happy, when they're sad, when they're distracted. They will tell me those things. Prior to that time, I thought I could watch dogs and apply the same principles that I had to the 5 children that I've raised, that Leanne and I have raised. But dogs don't act like people. Dogs act like dogs. And I recently had a good friend of mine ask me, "Does Doug think you are a dog?" And I think Doug does think I'm a dog. I think he thinks somehow I'm more than a dog. But when we communicate on his level, not my level. And I don't superimpose human emotions on Doug, because Doug's not a human. Doug is a dog. He thinks like a dog. He acts like a dog. One of the best friends I've ever had. Dogs don't hold grudges. Dogs don't have emotions the same way humans do. They're much more basic. than humans. Dogs don't get angry. They get defensive. They protect themselves. They get afraid at times. But usually, if the person on whom they depend conveys to them that they need not be afraid, they will normally take that. Particularly if that person has taken the time to convince them, to show them that the person is not only able but willing to assume control for the dog's protection. For instance, when Doug and I are walking out in crowds of people, but he knows that if another dog comes up and threatens him, that I will step between them and I will take care of it. He need not get involved. I don't need his protection. I am providing his protection. Those are the kinds of things that you need to watch for as you watch me train dogs. And my intention is to actually show you entire training sessions so that you can see, how long does this take? Well, the truth is it takes different amounts of times for different dogs. But at least for the dogs that I'm training, how long did it take to actually teach the dog to do that? And when I use words like when I told the dog or explained to the dog, I don't really tell the dog anything with words. What I'm saying is I have impressed upon the dog by my manner and maybe through the use of a leash, maybe through the use of just the pressure of my presence, that this is what I want you to do. And maybe I physically show the dog how to do it. Watch how that's done. And then do it like I do it. Don't take the things that you see me do and try to do them your way. That's what I did. Actually, for a couple of years. It doesn't work. Doing them the way that the trainers do it, that's how it works. That's when it works, is when you do it with the same attitude, the same demeanor. You will hear me say from time to time that I have growled or issued a low growl to the dog. What I'm talking about is this. Notice that Doug looks at me. That means I want your attention. In fact, not only do I want your attention, I demand your attention. It's the same sound he heard from his mother when he was fresh out of the womb. When he was doing something that his mother did not approve of and was about to issue some correction, she would precede that correction or accompany that correction with baring a little teeth and a low growl. So because that's his instinctive way of communicating, that's the way I communicate with him. Now, that doesn't mean I'm mad at him, and it doesn't mean that I bear a grudge toward him. He doesn't understand grudges anyway. It means that right now, I demand your attention right now. And when he gives it to me, it gets followed up with love. And that does not confuse a dog. It doesn't confuse a dog at all. He can connect those dots very easily. And that's what we try to do in training dogs. And let me say at this point, let me go ahead with one more issue. When a dog begins to obsess on something, some other person, another dog, a bicycle, a skateboard, whatever, their emotions, imagine this, their emotions go from 0 to an 8 or a 9, at which time they are constituting a threat to that other person. In order to correct a dog, you have to issue a correction that is a step or two above the emotional level where the dog is. So if the dog's obsession on whatever this is has raised from a 0 to a 4, then you're going to have to correct at a 5 or a 6 in order to gain the dog's attention and gain control of the situation. So what does that mean? What it means is, if you will pay close attention to the moment that the dog notices whatever it is that he obsesses on, you know what it is. When he first notices that child on a skateboard, if you will issue a correction, just at a 2 or a 3, at that moment, you'll get the dog's attention right then, and you will never have to issue a 7 or 8 level correction, and understand I'm talking about on a scale of 1 to 10. You will never have to issue a serious correction because you're issuing them before the dog starts to obsess. That timing is so important. It's critical to helping the dog gain control of his behavior and learn to, when he is with you, keep his attention on you and not obsess on that barrage of stimuli that come his direction from the world around him. Okay? You will hear me say several times, set the dog up to fail. What that means is, if a dog is obsessing on something, what we're going to do is try to set up a situation where we are in control, we have the tools ready to correct the dog and to praise the dog. And when the dog reacts like we know he will, when he fails, we will be in the perfect position to control the situation and to train the dog. If you try to train the dog when you're out taking walks with your dog, that won't work, because you will be out of position, you will not be attuned, there's no way that you can give the correction at the proper moment when you are as surprised as the dog is that the stimulus has presented itself. But if you set the dog up to fail, that is, create the circumstances in which the dog can be corrected at the right moment, or you can gather the dog's attention toward you at the right moment, then you have trained the dog. So when I say set the dog up to fail, that's what I'm referring to. All right, we're gonna end it there. I promise we're gonna end it right here. And I look forward to spending some time with you guys, learning to help your dog be everything that your dog can be, to be your best friend. That dog that you've always wished you could have, I want to help you have that dog. And I'm looking forward to doing it. I hope you get a Doug. Thanks.